I knew a simple soldier boy who grinned at life in empty joy, slept soundly through the lonesome dark, and whistled early with the lark. In winter trenches, cowed and glum, with crumps and lice and lack of rum, he put a bullet through his brain. No one spoke of him again. You smug-faced crowds with kindled eye, who cheer when soldier lads march by, sneak home and pray you'll never know the hell where youth and laughter go. A poem of Siegfried Sassoon entitled Suicide in the Trenches is a tragic example of the dark realities of the war he lived through. World War I, also known as the Great War, was initially seen by many as a valiant struggle. Patriotic young men answering the call to fight for their country, believing in honor and heroism. But as the war went on, the harsh realities started to change this perception. It became less about honor, and people couldn't but help think about the more devastating loss of life, which brought so many to see the pointlessness of the battle. World War I was a nightmare, to say the very least, and that was brought to light by the first-hand accounts of those who lived through it, like Siegfried here. But it wasn't always seen this way at the start for most, if not all, soldiers, and that is because going into it, individuals didn't really know what to expect. They just liked this idea that they were going to fight for their country, for the people they loved, and for the life that they loved. But the shift from viewing the war through this romanticism to acknowledging those personal experiences will emphasize the lasting impact of first-hand accounts. Which brings me to my question, and that is, how did first-hand accounts, like letters, diaries, poetry, how did they shift the public perception of World War I? To understand this shift, we look to the posters, which were used at the time as a major tool for spreading the idea that this war was about fighting for honor and values that mattered to people. Countries on all sides of the conflict distributed posters widely to gain support for the war effort. Many of the Germans believed that they were defending their nation's pride, their culture, way of life, and soldiers were told that it was their duty to serve their country, to protect their families and uphold national identity. But at the heart of this transformation were the stories of soldiers themselves, the horrific experiences in the trenches, the constant threat of death, and the trauma soldiers endured. This war introduced to the world what we call the shell shock, or what we now refer to as PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, which left a lasting impact on how we understand war itself. It was the writings of soldiers that described the filth, fear, and futility of life in the trenches. These soldiers would write about seeing their closest friends die, the constant bombardment of shelling, and the pointlessness of the battles, and the horrific conditions that so many lived in for oh so long. Rats and bodies would litter the wet, muddy trenches that these shell-shocked soldiers would live in for days and days at a time, regularly going without sleep. One of the most influential works that conveyed the shift was the poetry of soldiers like Wilfred Owen, who penned powerful verses such as Dulce et decorum est, where he described the true horrors of gas attacks and the gruesome nature of death on the battlefield. Dulce et decorum est. But someone still was yelling out and stumbling and floundering like a man in fire or lime. Dim through the misty panes and thick green light, as under a green sea I saw him drowning. In all dreams before my helpless sight he plunges at me, guttering. In all my dreams before my helpless sight he plunges at me, guttering, choking, drowning. If in some smothering dreams you too could pace behind the wagon that we flung him in and watched the white eyes writhing in his face, his hanging face like a devil's sick of sin, if you could hear at every jolt the blood come gargling from the froth-corrupted lungs, obscene as cancer, bitter as the cud of vile, incurable sores on innocent tongues, my friend, you would not tell with such high zest to children ardent for some desperate glory the old lie. Owen's poetry directly challenged the romanticized notions of war, calling out the lie that it was sweet and honorable to die for one's country. And it wasn't just the poets who spoke out. Memoirs from soldiers like Éric Maria Remarque, author of All Quiet on the Western Front, provided intimate accounts of how the war brutally crushed the ideals of nationalism and glory. His book became a symbol of disillusionment felt by the countless soldiers, illustrating the deep psychological and emotional scars the war left behind. It was first-hand accounts like these that helped shape public opinion in the post-war years, and the once heroic image of soldiers transformed into one of a victim, caught in a senseless and tragic conflict that could have been avoided. These voices made it clear that the horrors of war could not be hidden or ignored, and they challenged the prevailing narrative that war was a necessary evil for the sake of national pride. By the end of the war, it became clear that the cost of the conflict far outweighed any supposed glory. The first-hand accounts of soldiers in letters, poetry, and memoirs give us a deeper understanding of the emotional and psychological toll of war. Through their stories, the world began to see World War I not as a valiant fight for country, but as a pointless tragedy that destroyed an entire generation. In the years following the war, stories like these spread. Society's view of the war would never be the same again, and the shift of these romanticized notions of glory to a sobering acknowledgement of war's true cost changed how we view conflict forever.